Oh,
All right, you are unmuted.
all right. We're gonna call this meeting to order. It's 2:50. This is the Benson County Board of Commissioners study session. Have a roll call, please.
Janat,
Here.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Here.
Roloffs is absent, Sauer,
Here.
Trigg. Here. Worsecki is absent.
Good. Rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We have an agenda before this. Do we have any additions?
I'm wondering if we can just take a moment to talk about the possibility of screen sharing during our meetings so that people in the audience and online can see what we're looking at.
So I do that for presentations.
Okay, well, let's put that, if you might have a
The-
quick discussion, C,
Yeah.
screen sharing.
And it doesn't have to be resolved today.
I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Jeanette so moves.
Triggle second. Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Moving along. Okay, we have minutes to approve. Everybody get a chance to take a look at those?
Trigg moves to approve the agenda, but not the agenda, the minutes from 2/11/25, excuse me.
Markey will support.
Good, we have motion and support. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, say aye. Aye. Nay, same sign. So moved. That opens our first public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak? Please state your name.
Eric Van Duzen. I appreciate the detail that you put in your motion this morning with regards to the local pre-suit mediation. As Kaylee knows, I've pointed out multiple instances where that detail wasn't in your previous minutes. So I submitted FOIA requests to try and figure out what happened during those closed sessions when you went in to discuss a letter from your attorney, for instance, on multiple occasions. So with regards to the discussion that the chair and vice chair are going to have with the MMRMA officials, one of my FOIA requests of several is to get a copy of the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority's litigation management protocol. And that's something you all should read probably, because I don't have a copy of it. I know attorneys that have seen it before and told me what's in it, but that's what they have to do to when they represent a client, and the client is technically you, but as we all know, there's some feelings on this board and myself that maybe they're working more for the insurance company than they are working for you. And I think that you should implore upon them, these MMRMA officials and Cummins, McClory, Davis, and Acho, or any other attorneys that you use through MMRMA, that all communications that they send to MMRMA, all attorney invoices, all status reports are additionally CC'd to the Board of Commissioners. So they don't just go to MMRMA, because you are the client. And I think that keeps you in the dark when you don't get those invoices. You don't even know what's happening for a year in this litigation. You get informed that there's a lawsuit filed against you, and then it's out of sight, out of mind until, an attorney comes and says, hey, we got to settle a lawsuit that we already mediated, which is, I saw in your packet, there's an attorney use policy from the building authority that we used when I was the chair of that board. I guess you're going to be considering implementing an attorney use policy. That's not probably, all those things are probably not relevant to this board. I get that, but I really think you're on the right track to implement something so that, moving forward, you have guidance on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And that brings us to our HR update. And I would like to welcome Shelley. Shelley, yes?
In my 3 weeks here, this is our update.
We have filled 5 positions, including my own, including the deputy director, equalization technician, road patrol deputy, and a full-time EMS paramedic. We have currently 5 open positions, including 1 corrections officer, 2 paramedic positions. Those are all posted. We have offers out to the 2 open positions for emergency communication specialists. 1 offer is extended pending a physical. The second is currently awaiting the Test Genius results. We have 1 workers' comp claim, and I have contacted the provider, and they are currently up to date on everything they need to be submitted. And 1 unemployment claim that I am currently discussing with the state.
She hit the ground running.
You did. So let me ask, you had a book left for you, right? With kind
The
of
Orange Bible, yes.
The Orange Bible, right?
Mhm.
And that's been helpful.
It's been
in
great.
navigating, 'cause
Stephanie
you're
has been
onboarding
amazing
people
and-
from the get-go, right?
Pardon me?
You're onboarding these new employees?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep,
okay.
with a lot of help. But yes, we are onboarding. Everything should be going fine. A little hiccups I'm finding along the way, but it's a learning curve.
Shelley, if I could, Art Janat, I'm the chair.
Yes, sir.
We've heard a lot of good things about you. And you're only as strong as the people you surround yourself with, right? Could
Absolutely.
you just take a couple minutes to share your background with us?
Absolutely. I am new to Benzie County. Very new. I've been here about 60 days. I have always loved Benzie County, so this is my life change to move here and be here for the rest of it. I have about 15 years in HR. I've worked in the gaming industry, nonprofit, and manufacturing. I left manufacturing to come here to live and fulfill the dream of living in Benzie. So,
Just hope that dream doesn't become a nightmare.
have you driven by my house?
Not recently. Well, actually, yeah, I did.
She's looking better.
And-
I wanted to give a shout out to these 2 for building engagement. There was a St. Patrick's Day potluck. I don't know if that's something that we normally do, but also an office decorating contest that I know the people in the community were talking about as well. And also Sam's Club was here doing an enrollment there as well. So we're trying to keep everybody actively involved in the building.
I would just add to that, we administration has worked hard to hire good talent. Sheriff's office is doing the same thing. But now it's about making them feel wanted. And
Absolutely.
Katie, I give her a lot of credit. She and the initiatives that she's put in place to make that happen. It's interesting, the smallest of things. People just want to be recognized,
Mhm.
let them know that they're appreciated. On the other hand, if you've got a weak player, gotta go.
No, it's not necessarily true.
Don't listen to this guy.
We'll see.
Develop them into something.
So anything else?
Yeah, you only rehabilitate A and B players, enough said.
We're
Thank you.
picking, we're picking.
I'm already in trouble.
A little bit.
Thank you. Great job. And welcome again. We're so glad to have you here. Yeah. Okay, let's move on for our topics of discussion. Our first one is a discussion regarding process and procedure for claims and attorney communication to the Board of Commissioners. Katie, I'm going to hand off to you to run with this.
Perfect. So as Eric noted, there's an attorney use policy in the packet. That's really just an example. The Board of Commissioners can use it, pull from it, it's just there as kind of a talking point. I also passed out on your desk the board rules, and I highlighted the section that covers attorney interaction and the responsibilities of the administrator and the chair of this board when it comes to the attorney and closed sessions and protected and confidential information, which I think kind of goes along with this conversation as well. Part of this conversation is kind of just determining the level of communication this board wants. So before my time here, when Mitch Dyche was the administrator and Dawn Alney was the member representative of the MMRMA, the typical fashion was if Dawn received something in the office related to a claim or a lawsuit or, anything like that, she would simply announce while she was clerking at the meeting, hey, I got a document, I got a suit, I got served, come see it if you want to see it. And that's kind of where it ended. And then I'm sure commissioners would go down and view things, but that's kind of how it was. And then when Dawn retired and it was turned over to administration, I would forward it on. And so typically when I receive the documents being served for a suit, I send those off to the Board of Commissioners, hey, FYI. When it comes to smaller claims like car deer accidents, we hit a really big raccoon one day. I don't send those to you because they're just kind of everyday claims that are coming in. We get them quite often, and they're just those unexpected small things that are coming through. A lot of car deer really is what they boil down to. And so it's been brought to, my attention that maybe that level of communication isn't quite enough, or maybe it needs to be tweaked, or maybe there's another process in how we want to do this. And so that's why we're here today, is to talk through that process. My thought process and recommendation is that the board probably doesn't really care to know every time we've hit a deer. But obviously we want to know about the big things. But where it goes from there, I'm happy to hear your thoughts and your direction that you want to see it go. There's my opening statement.
Let me throw out the first volley. If we're looking for a threshold, should it be tied to dollars?
Not necessarily. You're gonna see if there was, say, a totaled vehicle, you're gonna see that it's gonna come before you, to purchase the new vehicle and those sorts of things. I don't think so. For instance, the raccoon was almost $3,000, but then there's a deer that was like $1,200. So
How do you put a price tag on a raccoon versus a deer?
they're much cuter.
Let me ask you this, what about worker comp claims? I mean, these are things that create liability as well
Mhm.
and payouts. And so do you want these handled separately or in the same pool as being sued and a comp claim?
Well, I think they should be very separate. And when it comes to the workman's comp claim, there's not a lot we can say from that standpoint. Really not much at all. So I think the HR updates that you've been receiving of, hey, we have one active one, hey, we have two active, or what have you, maybe the extent you really need to know in a public setting.
So explain that to me. How can we be made aware and be sent over the lawsuit claim, but we can't have information on a comp claim?
Well, I said in a public setting.
Right.
When it comes to workman's comp, there is HIPAA issues that really shouldn't be shared widely via email. So we could potentially notify you in other ways, but I am not comfortable having Shelley or I stand at a podium and saying Katie Zeitz fell and broke her ankle and now she
No,
needs
I'm
12
not saying that.
surgeries.
I would say in an open meeting.
Yeah.
We don't share the lawsuits.
Yeah. No.
But I'm saying, make the board aware.
Mhm.
So the information is being shared. So we're aware that there's, liability has just occurred and action is probably going to be taken. And so that level of awareness.
Yeah, I guess it's a matter of how much do you want to know? Because right now you're notified monthly, hey, there's an active claim for this or an active claim for disability, but that's all you know. You don't know the staff person, you don't know the situation. Do you want to know more than that when it comes to workers' comp and, like short-term disability?
I would ask that, or I'm inquiring, if we do have a workman's comp claim, is there things being looked at to mitigate that from happening again? Sometimes it's circumstantial.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Slipping on a stair because it's icy is one thing, right?
Yeah.
But if we have something where,
There's a guy here.
Yeah,
Can you not use that example? Can we not use that example?
so does that mean we have to go out there and salt before anybody walks on it?
Well, the Buildings and Grounds is looking at enhanced equipment for the maintenance department to address some of those slip and fall issues.
So the
Yes,
question is, when we have a workman's comp claim,
yes.
are we taking the necessary steps to take a step back and say, okay, we could have done something maybe to prevent that from happening, or maybe we can do something to prevent that from happening again?
Yeah, and honestly, as far as our work comp claims, we have pretty few. There's really not a ton. And when appropriate, yes, we're like, okay, what could we do better? If it's salty, how can we improve, remediation of salty areas or slippery areas?
So Ron, is that the kind of information you're looking for? It's like, how can we mitigate going forward, or?
Conversation for the whole board. I mean, do we
Yeah.
want to know more than our monthly report from our HR person? I'm okay with that. I think for my purposes and where I'd like to start the conversation, yes, is the lawsuits. The billing of our attorneys too is something that we need to discuss. It was shared with us today that there's information out there when we discuss with our attorney. I mean, I know when we do AP review, we see, both Stoker and Toskey
Mhm.
bills, because we pay our quarterly,
We
whatever.
pay our
so-
retention.
Our retention,
Yeah,
and
or,
so we see
retainer.
those, the people who are doing AP review. Is there other billing that we should be aware of? If we don't know, if we haven't looked at it, I don't know how to properly ask for what we haven't seen.
Mhm.
So is there a level that we're not, that we should raise the bar
Sure.
in that area? That's where I would start.
Yeah, so accounts payable, you're seeing Cole Stoker and Toskey because we pay them a retainer for our, general counsel. The other attorney invoices are sent directly to the MMRMA. Going back through the history of my email because of the FOIA requests that have come in. The attorneys, when I first started, used to send me more of the invoices, but as of late, I didn't get them until I asked for them. And so if we want to be receiving them, which we probably should be, and mind you, we're not paying those invoices directly, other MMRMA is paying them on our behalf. We can ask for that. I'm sure they'll oblige to that. It's a matter of, do you want those invoices or not? Or would you rather see a quarterly statement from the MMRMA that says, here's the outstanding items. This is how much we've paid. This is how much we think this is worth.
I hear two different discussions going on, by the way. One, Tim already alluded to it. I'll call it corrective actions based on an incident. And then the other is oversight of payment of legal bills. I think those are two separate things.
There's gonna be a third one too.
Okay, what is it?
So the third issue for me is we do get a lawsuit and then, okay, we're notified that we got sued. And we don't hear anything again until either it's being resolved or whatever, right? Yeah, on arbitration. Is it worth our while to say, okay, that one's going to court on this date? And then just get updates so we know where it's at in the process.
I would even offer like a spreadsheet of the current lawsuits,
I
what
saw,
actions
yeah.
have been taken, the date they were taken. So we can reference this document. It can be added to, we can all access it to know this was filed on such and such a date. And make the attorneys know the board wants to be aware of this. So if they have, because it's true, I mean, in the years that I've been here, and Gary, you've been here way longer than I have. You hear about a lawsuit and then a lot of time passes. So you hear about the next action. And I think a lot of stuff happens in the middle that, can we do anything about it? Can we change the direction that the case? Probably not, but we probably should know that these things are happening in the process.
I think Katie's trying to, that. There's been things in the past where nothing got shared.
Right.
Got shared with the chair, maybe. And then by the time you find out what's going on, we're already to the mediation part, or you're already asked to prove a settlement or whatever. I would prefer to know earlier, and even though half the stuff I can't understand anyway. And you see the court cases and stuff where it's going and how it's getting there. But at least by having that, you can go in and ask her questions or ask somebody questions. And I think Art summed it up best. We all need to be informed.
Yeah, and Art and I have had the conversation that we are very much in favor of it's not just us that should get the information, it should be the whole board.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's exhausting because when we get information, to not violate OMA, we got to be careful about how we're passing that information around. But Katie, you gave us one report that summarized activities since you started.
I was just going to touch on that.
Okay, why don't you? Because maybe that's the tool we can use.
Yeah, so I want to be clear, and for those possibly viewing online, you know, we're talking about this topic and these communications, but I want to make it very clear. We don't have a lot of lawsuits. So it's not like there's this huge mountain we're trying to tackle right now. Since I began at Benzie County, there's been 9 total. And of those 9, not all of them actually had any merit and came to any sort of fruition. So I just want to be clear, in 4 years, there's only 9. This isn't some big mountain we're trying to tackle. I would be fine. As far as a spreadsheet goes, I could probably start tracking a spreadsheet, but that's pretty cumbersome to, I would rather see the status reports forwarded to you. That might be easier than trying to track a separate document and create a separate document, which is then trying to recap sometimes a 28-page status report into a box on Excel.
But what's the frequency of the status reports?
It just depends. Sometimes they're a bit more often than others.
And I wouldn't say that that couldn't be effective, but what I would like to see is like on a quarterly basis, even if it says no status available since the last status, at least we know we're tracking it and we haven't missed anything.
And I would add to that, you're just gonna send me a 28-page document that outlines what's going on. I can be able to read that and know what's going on. I would like to know maybe
I don't know your comprehension level.
second grader, maybe, okay?
I'm being honest, like, I don't know
Well,
how
what
you
I'm
comprehend.
getting at is,
So,
I mean, I don't wanna, I'm not saying I wouldn't get anything out of reading those 28 pages. But could that be taken care of maybe in like a 1 paragraph kind of thing?
A summary.
so typically, if the status report is really, really long, the attorney will block it down into the final paragraph, yes. You may miss a lot of detail, but you're gonna get this is
Summary.
what they're after.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Abstract.
I'm not shallow.
Yes. So, yeah, we've kind of talked about 3 different things
We
and we
have. Where
didn't
do you
really
want to
get
start?
anywhere. So focusing on lawsuits, let's focus on lawsuits that are, you know, being handled through the MMRMA. I am hearing, obviously, I'm going to still notify you of when when I'm served, right? But then the frequency from there, you're wanting a quarterly report, or, you know, do you want the status reports every time they're sent? Or do you want me to maintain a spreadsheet?
To the credit of people who have really called this to our attention, that we have to have this discussion. When next steps are taken and things are filed, are they asking you for permission to do it as our
No. We are with an attorney for their expertise and guidance. Who am I to say, please file a motion to dismiss? I don't
I'm not
have that
saying a
expertise.
motion to dismiss. I'm saying there are things that need to be filed in the process of a lawsuit. And what we're being told is we should be approving those things at the points of the process. They shouldn't just be taking these cases and deciding they're gonna file unless I'm misrepresenting that.
I know where you're going with it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
So
so somebody has to be approving and not just saying you're our attorney, run with this, take it to its endpoint. Let us know when it's time to mediate. There are things that happen in the process that we're being told require approval.
But bottom line is do we approve action items?
So the MMRMA and every attorney is going to fight you on that, because that's not the process, and it's going to diminish the process. And again, who are we to say what to do unless the court says to do it, or the attorney who is the subject matter expert recommends to do it? I can see increased communication, and that is really the big thing of what's being talked about, is this increased communication piece is a big part of it. I can see increased communication. I think that makes sense. The fact that we don't have as many closed sessions on these things is interesting. And I think we probably should have a little more, you know, have more closed sessions, and we can do that. But to try to micromanage the attorney who is working in our best interest and favor, that seems a little inappropriate to
No,
me.
I'm not saying micromanage. I mean, let me say it a different way. Are they asking you, or is the approval implied because we're the client? And we've hired them to
Yes.
represent us, that the steps along the way, they're asking for approval each step. They're assuming they have it because we've retained them.
Yes, but most of what they're doing is as a result of the court order. So the court's gonna say, do these depositions most likely.
And again, I'm
The
not.
court's
saying
gonna
we're doing it
say,
wrong.
file these briefs. The court's gonna say, I need a response in 90 days. So the courts dictate 98% of the timeline. All these mediations we've been through, we've not asked for them. The judge has said we shall go to mediation.
And then they come to us and ask us for what are we comfortable with?
Right, so they go to the MMRMA, who has established, you know, an overarching, this is what we think this claim is worth. And the MMRMA has a top dollar that typically is asked of first, and then they say to the county, does this make sense? But at the end of the day, the MMRMA is paying on our behalf.
I'm not questioning that.
Yeah.
No, the point is the procedural things along the way.
Yeah.
We're being asked, this was filed. Did you approve this? Did you see this? That's what we're being asked.
Yeah, and I would argue, and I know the multiple attorneys I've been speaking to through all of this would argue, who are you to question their response, the detail of that response? Being not the subject matter expert.
So I'm going to tell you, I've had a different experience. In 20 years' time, the attorneys I work with, I pay the bill. They wouldn't dare come to me and say, you're not the expert in this subject matter. You know, if they want to get paid, they better come to me. But I get the sense that it's different in the public sector than it is in the private sector. What I want to make sure I'm doing is I'm fulfilling my responsibility to the public
Mhm.
in response to this activity. At a minimum, we should be aware of what's going on.
Hmm.
Because to your point, the judge may say, I'm sending this to mediation. He didn't say, what do you think about a
Yeah,
mediation?
no.
Before you come to my courtroom, you're going to mediation. And by the way, when you get done with that, you're going to go to arbitration. And then when you get done with that, I'll see you.
Yeah.
So those are the sequence of things, depending on how that relationship is written up. But I'm not worried about the attorney saying to me, you're not the expert in the subject material. Boy, that's the last thing you want to say to me, because I'm paying the bills. MMRMA is paying the bills. I pay an insurance premium to get them to pay that bill. So what can we do to make sure we're fully knowledgeable of what's going on, fulfilling our obligation as a conduit to the public?
Our oversight obligation.
Thank you.
Okay, oversight, yeah, because you're not sharing any of this with the public.
No.
So I've
Um,
been told.
yeah. Lock it up. I would say that increased in frequency and meeting with the attorney is going to be a big thing. I think we need to have them be more accessible to us so that we're meeting with them more often, so that you're briefed on these things a little more often. And then I think we just send you every status report that I receive.
And
I'm
it's up
gonna
to us to
invite
read
Under
it.
Sheriff Hubers up. I believe you want to speak to this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think in the, everybody knows who I am. I think in the last, 9 lawsuits that Katie referred to, our office was involved in 8 of them.
Hmm.
And I get those status updates too. Usually they're shared with Katie and I both. If there's an item that is legally has to have action by the board, you see the attorney in a closed session. There isn't any, he's not making or she's not making any decisions that have to be done by the board legally or should be done by the board legally without contacting you. I'm very confident in that. Do you share every one of those updates with the board or just the ones that
I just-
require a special meeting? or-
Correct.
Like Katie said, those updates are, they're some of them are 20 some pages, but they do at the end have a summary of kind of what this means going on. I've worked with all of you long enough to know that all of you can understand the majority of what's going on in that, and those updates. They're written in pretty layman's terms. I'm a pretty simple guy and I understand them, so I'm positive all of you can. If you get those updates and read those updates. Or at least the summaries on them. I don't know about the legal process of sharing them electronically. I'm
Well,
not
they're
sure.
all, they're all privileged and they all note that.
Because
at
that
the top.
opens them up to some FOIA stuff. Too. I
Correct.
mean, they're privileged, they're marked privileged, but it opens them up to some FOIA request too.
Yeah,
Well, is
the
it-
more digitalized, the less secure we can be about the attorney-client privilege.
But Katie, if you were to share that electronically with 7 of us,
Mhm.
is that any different than you having possession of it when it comes to a FOIA?
It's gonna be redacted either way.
Right.
Hmm.
So even if we get it, I mean, the risk is that we accidentally send it on to somebody that shouldn't get it. Wow, does that sound familiar? But,
Don't do that.
but it's,
Yeah, don't share on Signal.
so. And we can, because it's all electronic, it's a push of a button. You know, those that want to read it can. Greg already made a great suggestion. Go to the back page, look for a summary.
Typically, yeah.
If that's, because that's really all I care about. I don't care about the minutia.
Really, you're gonna read the first set or the first paragraph and the final paragraph. So, I mean, you should read the whole thing though.
Understood.
Um, so I'm happy sending the status reports to all of you. Keep in mind, don't expect an influx in emails because they're not, I mean, we only have, as of today, 2 left open. And they're only sending me a status report. Gosh, what do we get them?
12 weeks, maybe
Yeah.
8 to 12 weeks apart.
That's perfect.
Don't get them
When
off.
something happens in the court system, when there's a
Right.
change, they send an update. And that, I think that's all you're asking
And I
for.
think
That's
that's what we're
I'm
asking for,
getting.
just to be in the loop. And then if there are questions that arise from these updates, you know, we know to come Katie or to whoever we need to ask. I mean, is that fair?
Oftentimes they're just responding to something that the court's asked them for. It's a minutia is what it is. And if they were getting to me every week, I'd be concerned even about the bill.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if that was that frequent.
So, okay, so I think we've nailed that down. Initial notice and status reports. Got that down.
And just for historical reference on this,
Mhm.
there was a time, and I'm not saying in the last 5 years, but there was a time where it did go to the board chair and it got nowhere else.
Right.
And you know our feelings, you know, what we know, everybody's got to know.
Yeah, so I remember when I very first started, and I worked under Mitch for that few months, I was told, you tell the chair and that's where it ends. And so, and then my first chair and vice chair were Bob and Rhonda, and so I told the both of them. But then we started notifying the entire board of initial claims. And so, I mean, we've definitely came miles, but I think there's still a few miles left, and I understand that.
Thank you, Under Sheriff. I don't mean to make you stand
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that was.
I don't want to hammer somebody, but we did have chairs that wouldn't share any information.
And this prevents that from happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if in this document you're gonna produce, if it's actually stated in that document, then even future boards know they're bound to that unless they want to make a change.
Mhm.
And I would also add, as far as the things you're talking about, like hitting the deer and the raccoon and the,
I was gonna get to that.
oh, okay. I wouldn't say that's something we necessarily don't want to know about. If it could be added to the HR report, we had, you know, so many traffic incidents or so, you know, just something to let us know that there was a claim filed. You know, it wasn't a big deal, but so many, we had a raccoon, you know, two
My
animals.
favorite one.
Yeah. I don't know.
So initial notice and status report. Now moving into the invoices and money spent. I'm tackling this in towers in my head, so I apologize. So I receive a quarterly retention summary from the MMRMA. And what that does is it says, here's all your active items. So it's claims, car deers and such, as well as the suits. Here's what we've established as what we think this is worth. Here's how much has been spent, and here's the reserve. So I get that, and I could send that to you quarterly when I receive that, if you would like. Now, it's not always like clockwork because for some reason they send it to me via snail mail still. So when I get it, I would be happy to share that. And that would notate the car deer, the car raccoon, the side swipe, that would notate lawsuits. But it's also going to notice you of potential. So if we receive some sort of notice of intent, or sometimes when we get a Harry FOIA, I'll send it to the MMRMA and Matt Nordford and say, hey, FYI, this is looming out there. And so it's going to say like notice only by administrator and then what it is.
That'd be great.
But what I hear you saying is you'd have to scan it in and then send it.
Yeah, which is no problem. I'm just saying the rhythm, it's supposed to be quarterly, but it comes through the snail mail. And I found that sometimes it gets delayed.
Fine. I don't know how we could ask for more than that.
Okay.
I mean, it could be kept in the loop.
So that's
And-
not going to give you the individual invoice attorneys.
In addition to itemizing the activity, does it itemize the cost too, then the expense?
Here, let me just pull one up and go through the columns with you.
And that's 100,000 per occurrence? 30.
They establish a reserve amount for the claim depending on what it is, but then that 100,000 or 125,000 is kind of like, you know, that's like the hush money per se. Like we have this much to spend before it's going to start hurting and dipping into other buckets. I just moved stuff around thinking I was organizing it.
Doing good.
No, you're good. I wouldn't think so. I mean, probably. I would double check with MMRMA and Matt, but I would think it'd probably be okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But they send a status report digitally.
Well, because this is from the MMRMA and then the status report comes from the attorney. They're different.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if you couldn't ask the insurance company to start sending it to you digitally.
I could ask them. So this is from the third quarter of 2024. And so I receive a cover memo and it's statement of changes in your member retention fund. And it goes through receipts, claims related to payments, net claims and claim adjustments, other payments, and it kind of gives you a running tally. And this is how I track how much we're going to have to pay into our retention fund. So I know how much to budget. When that start getting low, I know I'm going to get a big bill to pay. And then the following pages from there, they go through and it indicates the claim, data loss, claimant, loss type, what's been paid via the loss, what's been paid via the expenses for the loss, and then the total paid for the claim.
So how many different or unique activities would be on that?
So for this one,
Because it's more than just two.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 9 on that specific report. And then sometimes they include a page regarding recovery. So that's specific to the Winkle one because that one's not technically a lawsuit. And then there's a member reserve report that follows that. And that goes into a bit more detail than the summary page of those things I listed. And then that's it.
And you're going to try to determine whether it's privileged information or not.
So this, based on this is not going to be privileged. I don't see anything in here that would be privileged. What would be privileged? The attorney invoices. I have to redact a lot of those attorney invoices because they offer explanation. So I would recommend that this would be what you'd want to see. And I would not recommend emailing you the attorney invoices each time unless you wanted to come see them. But I would hate to be widely sharing these attorney invoices when there's protected information on those. This summary sheet would not have protected information.
You know, I understand what you're saying, but there was something said this morning that I want to discuss with you at another day
Oh, okay.
that that I thought, you know what, if I had seen that invoice, I probably would have questioned it.
It's in your email. Because I copy you two to my responses to Eric.
Oh, okay.
So you should have them. It's the attorney invoices email.
And you probably remember which one I'm referring to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know exactly what it is because his name is noted in the invoice, which is why attention's been drawn to it.
Well, I have to plead guilty. I have seen so many of that.
Oh,
forwarded
gosh.
onto me.
There's hundreds of pages. There's
After a while,
about
it's just,
800 more to come tomorrow.
I go to bed thinking, thank God she's doing it.
Mhm. Okay. So do you want the attorney invoices or do you want the summary or do you want both? Just note that the attorney invoices are going to be like those status reports. It is confidential.
Anytime you have an attorney, I get kind of sick in the stomach anyway with the check. Uh, I don't see where it's really that necessary.
Either one.
I like the idea of the other stuff she. So,
The summary sheet, but
Mhm.
not the attorney invoices.
since
Christie?
They would be available to us though, if came to you and said, may I have a look at this?
Yeah. I just have to request that I'm actually getting them because I haven't been receiving them until I actually asked.
can always ask.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it makes sense that we at least have it. Does it need to be emailed to me? Probably not. But I think it makes sense for us to have it here.
We're talking about the summary sheet and the attorney
Oh,
invoices.
I thought we were talking about the attorney invoice. My
Both.
apologies.
Both of
Okay,
them.
both.
Yes, but I like when we talk about litigation, do an initial invoice and then the status report, right? Yes, I agree with that. And the invoice of the attorney, I think as long as we have it here and we could come see it, I think that's acceptable.
Yeah, I would agree.
What I'm struggling with is micromanagement.
Yeah. But if it's a summary sheet quarterly, is that micromanagement?
No.
Or is that just doing our due diligence
I
to be
think
informed?
I think Rebecca's right. I think we can probably put them in the packet unless you just prefer them emailed.
So if it can be available to the public, let it be.
Yeah, I don't see it being an issue to put in the packet.
More transparent, the better.
I don't care to see the attorney invoices, to be quite honest with you. If I'm curious about it, I'll come knock on
No,
her door.
it is a little bit alarming to me that you weren't seeing them though. I mean, I think that this is the change that needs to be made. And then if there's an issue that as you review all this stuff that needs to be brought to our attention, you know, you need to make them aware that the board has directed you that these
need 'em.
invoices need to be provided.
Yeah,
We're being questioned on it. It brought to light that perhaps they're not being sent.
right. Because they're addressed to me.
Oh, really?
Mhm. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. So I have that piece covered. So back to, so that document's gonna cover those smaller claims. So I think that's probably more than you need to know.
Yeah.
It's enough, right? As far as those other smaller claims that are happening every once in a while. Now getting to work comp stuff. Right now, you're simply told at a study session, hey, we have one active claim for work comp. We have 2 people out on, disability. Bam. What more would you want to know? Do you want to be notified when we notify work comp? I
I'm pretty comfortable with the HR report.
just like having the number and.
Unless it's a huge, I mean, a significant,
Mhm,
You pay workers' comp,
Yeah.
take care of these issues,
mhm.
and I think it'd be 10 years before it ever gets to a settlement if it's that bad or longer.
When you're really talking two different things, Gary. Workman comp is, we acknowledge that it's our responsibility. You're gonna be made whole. And then you've got that incident where it says, not only is it your responsibility, but I think I get additional damages for something. And now that's going to the attorney anyway.
That's going to our workers' comp insurance group.
Well, a claim like that may go to MMRMA.
Some of the claims I've seen through workers' comp.
Workman's comp, as I
haven't worked
understand,
their way on farther out, I guess is how I'm looking at it. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing.
as I understand workman's comp, that's about keeping an employee whole as a result of an incident on the job or for the job.
Right.
And then you've got an employee that says, not only do I want to be made whole because of my income, but I believe I suffered damages, emotional damages, and I'm going to sue you for those emotional damages. Those are two different things.
Correct. And then MMRMA is gonna be tied into that.
And they're
Right.
tied into that.
Mhm. Yeah, work comp is paying, it's covering the wage and we have policies and collective bargaining agreements in place that really dictate what we're paying and for how long and, those sorts of things.
Medical bills and
Misunderstanding that.
everything.
Yeah. And so that process, I mean, it's submitted and then I receive periodically a protected document, which is an update from the physician. Yeah.
So the
And-
workers' comp thing that Shelley talked about. This is just an incident that occurred.
Yeah, almost 2 years ago.
Oh, he just did it here recently. Anyway, but that's what she's updating us on.
Yeah, so when she says there's an active claim that she's becoming familiar about, that's the 2-year one that we're working through right now.
An accident claim is not a lawsuit.
No,
What you got to stay focused on is workman's comp is about keeping the employee whole while they're not able to work. And then if they think they've experienced emotional damage or some other damage, then they file a lawsuit, but by the way, can suspend their payments for workman's comp if they file a suit. But that's getting into the weeds now.
Mhm.
I'm
So-
with this group, by the way. That written report that we had been getting,
Mhm.
that absolutely satisfied me.
Perfect. So we'll get back to that. This was Shelley's first one, so she did a great job.
Yes, she did.
But I'll show her the template and that'll be easier for her too than having to recreate a wheel. Okay, so I think we're good on work
We're
comp.
good?
I understand what we want and where we want to go. So next, silo in my head now is the whole attorney use piece of these things and attorney communication. So I included the attorney use policy that Eric had provided as an example, just as an example. We have the section within our board rules that talks about some of this attorney communication and confidential and, how that's provided and by who. What does this board want to do? Do you want to take that further? Do you want to leave the board rules as they stand? So right now, outside of the sheriff's office, I'm really the only one who would reach out to Matt for a reason. And so really we're the two that have the most communication with Matt regarding, if you want a legal opinion or we're talking about collective bargaining issues, or we're talking about maybe a disciplinary issue that may lead to grievance and arbitration, we're calling on him for that guidance. I communicate in a sense after every board meeting when you approve documents that need his preparation, I'm sending that on, they're communicating, preparing that, communicating it back to me. But that's kind of how that's going. Do you want to be involved in those conversations or, I just making sure.
Personally, on other boards I've seen
Mhm.
where they had multiple people going to the attorneys, they were actually working against each other.
So my understanding is there was a time when Benzie, I kind of allowed anybody and everybody going to the attorney, and then they put like some sort of policy in place that said only the administrator or designee.
I don't know about Benzie County,
Mhm.
but another board that I interact with, you had 2 different members going to the attorney and they were telling the attorney to do different things.
Oh, geez.
And the attorney just loved it because he was able to bill all these dollars. I'm in favor of having everything funneled through one.
Mhm.
That way there's no confusion, there's no multiple, mixed messages. There's no, well, yeah,
There's no
that's my
coup.
take.
Take over.
Okay,
But
Yeah,
I think what we have in place now is more than sufficient.
well, and I will say that when Art and I met with Matt, he specifically said that what we have in our rules is very robust, I believe was his correct word, and much more than any other Board of Commissioner has.
They have too much, is that?
He's not saying it's too much, but we, you know, we have a meaty document, whereas most don't.
Gary, as you've observed, my question always is, can you defend me successfully? And Matt was said, yeah, in fact, that's more than what most boards do.
that's good enough then. I mean, and my confidence in you as an administrator just lends to it being easier for me to say, yeah, just, you know, this funnels through you and that keeps it simple. It keeps it clear, concise, and doesn't muddy the waters. I mean, I don't see any reason to disrupt what we're doing, in my opinion.
Oh, mine too.
Yeah.
I've seen it other ways and it was turned out very poorly.
I can see that. If you only have one message, you only have one way to go.
Yeah.
They're handing out 2 or 3 different messages.
Yeah,
You got a mess.
Well, and Greg and I,
Even if it's not meant to contradict each other, you're getting mixed interpretations of what's going on. That communication has to stay within one circle. But what this doesn't have is how do we retain an attorney? What frequency do we go back out for RFPs? That's missing in here. Now, Matt has been clear with us. If you look at page 9 on this, this is speaking to the whole thing. If we're okay, we don't need to over comply. Because the only thing that's missing here is selection of attorney that I can see.
well, it, under 10.1, the services of corporate counsel or other properly retained legal counsel retained by Benzie County shall be discussed by the Board of Commissioners in open session and subject to a motion authorizing the corporate counsel or other legal counsel to perform any legal services on behalf of Benzie County prior to said services before performed whenever possible. When legal services are required prior to the Board of Commission meeting or in preparation for that meeting, the administrator, after conferring with the chair or vice chair, is authorized to obtain and task for such legal services.
Can we get Matt just to send us an email or a letter that says, I've reviewed your attorney use policy and it's satisfactory? Just something we can have on file.
Well,
Because if he's going to defend it, I want to be able to refer back and
Hey,
say,
here, you look over at our board rules.
he looks
Right.
over your board rules when you guys approve them. So he already looked over these in January when you approved them.
you think
Isn't
that's
it part of
enough?
it? Part of it is, and you know, we approve this upon council review.
Yeah,
Well, you know, in fact, he did comment on that when I asked it before.
yeah.
My fault. I'd forgotten that.
The only thing that this maybe doesn't fully address, I mean, so this is specific mostly to our corporate counsel. You know, communication with the attorneys for claims, you know, that communication's different than me contacting Matt for county business. I don't know if you have some sort of want to have a separate policy regarding those.
Say that again. I'm not sure I understood you.
So I call upon Matt for county business and we pay a retainer and I'm comfortable calling him whenever. But when it comes to the attorneys who represent us via claims, in essence, we're charged every time I call them. And so do you want to see some sort of process or policy in place that says I can or can't contact them whenever I see fit? Because that's kind of what that attorney use policy, you know, says. It's a matter of dictating when and how and the bill and those, you know, that doesn't cover this.
Until I see abuse, there's no way I want to handcuff you.
Okay.
It could be 2:00 in the afternoon. You're looking for immediate response. That's a judgment call that we pay you to make,
Okay.
in my view.
I'm just asking because that policy is, it goes a little deeper than this.
Oh, the other one's probably overboard.
So I'm just bringing it up. I'm getting that confirmation.
Are you wanting something documented that gives you that authority?
No. No.
Yeah, until we realize it's being abused, I say let it go.
Okay. So we'll continue with the status quo. You know, like I said, it's really the sheriff's office and myself, and we copy each other on everything back and forth anyways. So there's just some things that make sense for him to pen via me. And so that's how we handle that. So very few other times is Matt ever contacted directly by a staff person, and they've always asked saying, hey, can I do this? And they copy me on it. And it's very few things, you know, one-offs. But other than that, really the communication comes through our office.
And keep in mind, that's based on personnel we have today.
That is correct. So pre-me, my understanding is maybe it wasn't always done that way.
Is the
Or-
chair to do that? Yeah.
And he contacts them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I call her first.
Yeah.
There's
I'm
only been-
speaking from a staff standpoint.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's only been one time since January that I felt like I should have a conversation with him that didn't necessarily include Katie.
How dare you?
I was just double checking your word.
I was
Is
on
everybody
vacation.
satisfied with this conversation? Do you have all the answers that you need? And
I have all
everybody
the
feels-
answers that I need. Yeah, I think I'm good. I'll probably go through and send you anything that I've received in like the last month just to get it to you. You two are gonna already have it because you've been copied on every FOIA response, but I'll get it to the others.
You good?
Just for clarification,
Sure.
we're really not making any changes from this conversation. We're gonna use the board rules and the documentation that's in there
Mhm.
to guide us.
Yep, and I'm going to speak with Greg Grant, who's representing us in the current lawsuit about meeting on a more frequent basis. I've already reached out to him to come for a closed session on April 22nd, and he's agreed to that. And so him and I will come up with a little bit better rhythm. I think for Hyder's situation, I mean, he's coming more already. And so I think that's just a shift in process that we'll make. I don't think there has to be a policy on it per se, but it's just a shift. And I think that's fine.
And that quarterly summary, whether you email it to us or decide to put it in the packet, that is going to be another avenue of information that we don't have right now that I think is, you know, it was a good conversation to have.
Absolutely.
You good? All right,
Great.
let's move on to discussion regarding extension of DTMV lease for the DHHS. Everybody enjoyed reading that lease?
I hope you did
Denied.
read it.
Denied.
So I passed out on your desk this morning a one pager. This was the letter that Gary received, but I told him it wasn't supposed to be Gary. It was,
They keep doing that.
they keep sending it to Gary.
Gary, how do you feel about that?
So this
I'd have tell them to find a new place to park.
So this is the letter that I received that they're telling us how much they're going to pay us in rent now for the next 5 years. So the documents that are included are a bit confusing and cumbersome because there's been changes along the way. You know, they've been down there for quite some time. I apologize if it was a little confusing, but in this last 5 years, basically what happened is they sent us a letter exercising their right to extend for an additional 5 years. And part of that was we were required to then send them expenditures and GL reports and all the things. They went through those and highlighted and all nickeled and all the things and told us, okay, we think you spent this much on us, so this is how much we'll give you for rent for the next so many years. And I responded back and said, you know, Benzie County pays money to MGT to do a cost allocation plan to determine, you know, indirect fees among departments and funds for child support, all these things, right? It's done under the federal code. And I said, maybe you should use this document because it's a true and accurate reflection of what Benzie County pays to support DHS in this building. And they refused. Nope. We're going to look at your invoices and look at the bills you've paid, and then we're going to tell you what we're going to pay you. Okay. Well, the downside of this, so then I responded back too with, well, over the last so many years, we had COVID. So of course our expenditures went because they weren't here. So what did that do to their rent? Because we didn't have the expenditures as normal because they weren't here and it was COVID. So our rent has went down because the average that they determined included years when they all worked from home. So we're receiving about $21,000 a year for the space. They encompass everything below us. They also encompass a break space.
21,000 a year?
Yes.
from 120,000 a year.
So the originally approved document was that they were supposed to pay us like 10 grand a month. And then it was renegotiated down to this, they can tell us how much. And so they encompass the space below us. They have a break space, they have a conference space. They do have a teledata space, but MDOC is also part of that space. They have their own bathroom, you know, those sorts of things. They have their own entrance. They don't want any of us in that space. I can tell you they utilize our maintenance a lot. And they were using our cleaning supplies and I said no more. So they haven't used our cleaning supplies in the last month. Because I said, you're not paying for that, so no. And so, yeah, so I indicated to them that there really was sour taste for extending past 2029. And of course they were like, well, we're sorry to hear that. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah, last,
you know, and so then that was a few months back when we determined all this stuff. And then recently, about a month ago, they've reached out and they said, you know, we want to extend in Benzie County. And I responded and said, you know, I'm not saying we won't have the conversation. I said, but I do envision a totally amended and restated agreement if that's what we're going to pursue. And she responded back with, we'd only be willing to look at possibly paying actual expenses, period. So no amended and restated agreement. And I said, okay. I said, well, I don't get to make this decision. I will take it to the Board of Commissioners to start the conversation. We have plenty of time because we have till 2029. I said, and I'll let you know where the conversation starts leading. And that's where it left off. So now it's in front of you to consider. You know, that space is rather large down there. They have 2 to 5 people there a week, maybe. In that space, I've asked them about shrinking their footprint. The only thing they were willing to give up was the teledata room, which we can't use because it's a concrete floor and no ceiling. It's literally servers. So it's the only space they were willing to give up. I asked them about shrinking their footprint because they only utilize just a handful of desks, right? Nope, they have to have a desk for every person employed, they said, whether they're there or not. So there's 17 cubicles down there, a director's office, a conference space, a lot of empty filing cabinets because they digitized everything, all just mostly dark and unused.
So I've got an opinion on this. Okay, first off, the short opinion is don't even respond. No response.
It's not my nature.
I'm telling you, from a negotiating perspective, I would not even respond.
Okay.
That was a poorly written contract to begin with. If you read the language of that, they can discontinue that contract if they no longer have a need for the space. So they can hang it on us at any moment they want to. They've gotten a pretty good deal. The county got a really good deal in the front end. They're getting a really good deal now, and they're trying to dictate terms to me that they have absolutely no leverage with. And when someone does that to me, you're out. And I think the first thing we need to do is decide, do we need it? And we're not gonna make that decision in 30 days.
No.
well,
So you know what? Leave them hanging.
can't we hang them out to dry on that? Cause I thought there was a clause in there. Whatever they call that constitutional thing where you take people's property.
So the only opportunity we
And
have
we
to
could-
get them
we
out
could
is
move them
eminent
out.
domain.
Eminent domain.
I don't have an issue with going there.
That's
either.
expensive. Their circuit. court.
Well, it's
they've got-
expensive now what we've lost.
I know.
Yeah. And we're in a contract for till 29 anyway.
We have lots of time.
We got a ton of time. Just because they're in a hurry suddenly doesn't mean we should be in a
I
hurry.
think they realize what's gonna happen.
Well, they're trying to button it all down. Not gonna happen.
So
They
they've
they
built-
approached you wrong, as far as I'm concerned.
They built a brand new building in Manistee and they're also regionalizing their offices. So Manistee, Mason and Benzie will be considered one district and one office. Their space in Manistee will house more than Manistee's people because they're remote workers.
Is
But
there
the-
one entry? One entry to that space?
Yeah, they have that one main entry
One
and then there
main
is a door that comes into our side of the building.
The question that has to be answered when you commented about they have plenty of room to house the whole operation is Benzie County resident access. So that needs to be taken into account too.
Yep.
but I can't say this enough. I don't need to respond to them. And I know you're anxious to go say it's within your DNA to want to say something,
I know.
but I'm promising you that from a negotiating tactic, you say nothing.
Okay.
You're not required to.
I won't respond.
Well, I mean, I'm only one of 5 members
Well,
here.
even with the increased costs that we've had, even when they were off on COVID, the increase in the sewer and the water and stuff like that. This is impossible for me to believe. Less
Well,
than what, $9,000 a month?
and
No, it ain't even that.
their door down there.
50 a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You can't even buy an apartment down in Detroit for that.
So their door down there now too, doesn't meet their requirements for ADA. So now we have to buy them a new like $10,000 handicap door too.
I would delay that as much as you can.
We
too.
have been until we've gotten this far. I've been delaying it a little bit because they're not down there.
what's the square footage you say?
It's just
But-
below 17,000 square feet
right.
that they totally encompass.
17,000.
Well, when you count all their conference space, their break space, their teledata space, it's a lot of space.
So you know what, if you just use $8 a square foot, which is at the low end for for that kind of property in Benzie County, and that's a primo location, that should be $136,000 a year.
You go through that whole thing and they started out at what, 107? They got up to about 122, 100.
Yeah, they were,
Those were online.
11 grand.
yeah, they were paying about 11 grand a month for a while there, and then it bam went right down, and now this is a decrease from
Yeah.
last year.
That's what they should have been, that's what they were paying based on your calculation at the bottom.
But when the contract was negotiated, what they were doing is basically paying the
Yeah.
bond payment. So it was a good deal for Benzie County, but there are so many things that I would have loaded into that. As an example, I would have amortized part of the janitorial expense. I would have taken whatever depreciation for 17,000 square feet is. There's so many things that I'd have loaded in there that never happened. That's very commonplace
Yeah.
in a lease.
Well, and that's why we started including that space into the cost allocation plan. Because I wanted to determine what the true indirect costs were for supporting that venture, because the lease payments never made sense to me, even as a layperson who used to rent in Traverse City. And so, I mean, I paid more than that for a 1-bedroom apartment in Traverse City 10 years ago. So, that's why we started including it in the cost allocation plan, because I wanted to see what we're truly supporting them. And that's, I gave them the last 3 years of cost allocation plans, because that's when I had it put in there, and they would not accept that.
They think they've got leverage.
Yeah, and they do based on the document as it stands. I mean,
We are not required to renew that lease.
no, I'm saying they have leverage in the sense of they don't have to pay me what that says, because the document at hand says that they can pay me what they tell me.
Got it.
Yeah.
Again,
This
it's the
was
wrong
last 5
posturing
years.
for wanting to negotiate a
I-
lease.
I do think that you could probably take them to court for not negotiating in good faith.
I mean, they were negotiating, but
It was
20
spelled
years
right out in the
ago.
addendum.
yeah.
They negotiated this a long time ago.
I think this was,
Didn't the most one-sided agreement you'd ever seen?
yeah. I think
Yeah.
Chuck originally signed it. Who? Chuck Clark? Isn't he the original
I see
signer?
Mary Pitcher was named
She was
front
the
and
chair.
center.
She was chair.
Back in
And
2000.
then, of course,
or
David
whatever.
was the first one when they first started building.
Oh, yeah, David Tucker.
Oh, David Mead.
Oh, David Mead.
Well, I mean, you look through a different lens and you've created an agreement where the project's gonna be paid for. And you're not worried about the back end. Project's gonna be paid for, we won't need that
And the
much.
fact
Just
is-
like Point Betsy.
Right,
If you're a commissioner, you know damn well you wouldn't be here by the time this thing came to fruition.
Well, and you're looking at it, in fairness, I'm glad you're being fair about it, because in fairness, they're looking at, well, everything after the bonds paid is gravy.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't, because you're what I call lost opportunity.
Right.
So,
Well, and they're barely covering our expenses. I mean, you want me to tell you
I
how
don't
much
think
our
they are.
electric bill is for this
I
building?
think they're covering your
Like,
expenses.
they're not even covering our maintenance expenses.
and the utility, the sharing of utilities based on square footage. So
Yeah,
if they have 10,
this-
if they have
this-
10% of the total square footage, they pay 10% of the bill?
No, they're paying this much every month and no more. They're not paying for
I know, but
utilities.
how did we arrive at their utility and what we would share with them in utilities?
I'd have to pull up the 97 pages of notes she sent me of where she highlighted and calculated with red pen to tell me how much she would pay of the electric bill.
In one page, she should have said, look at, you have X amount of square footage. We represent 10% of that square footage. We'll pay 10% of the bill.
Mhm.
That doesn't take 90 pages to tell you that.
Can't we have the
Well,
sheriff's office get on there? and
She
say,
had me send her that much supporting documentation for her to go through. To then,
Well, you know, they bury you in detail and hope that you get lost in it, and someone did.
yeah, I did.
Oh, no,
You had nothing
I'm not
to do
gonna
with
place it at your feet
No, I'm
because
just picking.
you're only working with what,
I do think we have a 3-year window here, or three and a half year window to decide what we're gonna do with that space. I don't see this relationship moving past 2029,
Mm-mm.
and it creates an opportunity to meet space needs or to sublet a portion of that space to generate revenue. If we don't need all of it, and we need to be thinking about the best and highest use.
So based on our calculation, they're encompassing 16% of the building.
I doubt they're paying 16.
16% of that building, of the building. So no, they're not covering 16% of our
Is
operations.
everybody comfortable if there's just a non-response, or do you?
I like the idea of not responding.
At least
See how it's gonna work out. Katie might not, I might have to go talk.
There's something powerful about wondering what's going on.
Yep. I think that's the greatest thing you could do.
How does everybody else feel? Christie?
Wonderful thing is, I think I watched the YouTube video and understand why we're not responding.
Right.
Yeah. And
Gosh,
throw stones at me if they want.
oh, that'd be nice.
Throw stones at me.
I don't think.
'Cause
I
they
mean, I
don't
think,
at
I think
me.
this meeting's gonna speak for itself. There,
Yeah.
this is viewable, it's on YouTube. I mean, we're not sharing any secrets here, so.
So part of the conversation that you and I had, Art, was, you know, what are our needs of that space potentially as a county? And I don't think it's too soon to start exploring some of those avenues. And so I would say that at our next Buildings and Grounds meeting, which we'll probably be having one here fairly soon about the handicap door and stuff. I think that's a standing conversation at our Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee meeting to start talking about, you know, maybe what our needs are for that space.
I'd really encourage you to, even though it's dated, pull out that space planning.
Yeah, I can pull it out. And I'll pull out the notes too from the ad hoc that we had regarding animal control, recycling and EMS needs too, because we kind of talked about some of the, you know, visual needs that we thought we would need for Benzie County purposes.
I suspect the Buildings and Grounds gonna require like 30 or 40 quotes for that handicap accessible door.
I received 3 emails in one day over a toilet that was leaking.
Down there?
And it wasn't even like, it was like dripping every once in a while. 3 emails in one day.
Hard to believe because there can't be a handful of people even show.
I know,
up
it
that
happened to be the day somebody was there, I guess.
Wonderful
I
thing
do
is-
think on the front end, contracting that space out worked to the benefit of the county.
Absolutely.
And so if we don't need all that space, I think looking for a similar arrangement to find a need that would meet county services in some way would not be a bad route. I don't think we contract all of the space out, but
Right.
if there's a way to partition it or make it a revenue generating space as well as meeting our space needs, I think we need to look at that at Building and Grounds.
Yeah.
I think we can explain later, but
Yeah, I mean,
maybe we're gonna need it. I don't
yeah,
know.
maybe we need the whole space, maybe we need half the space, maybe they could just be in the front corner to serve the Benzie residents.
Oh, no, I think they're.
I don't know. Okay, I
I think
mean,
they're gone.
I'm just saying,
Well, if you've read the statistics most recently, Michigan is gonna have almost a stagnant population growth, except for this corner.
Right.
Going up through Traverse City, Charlevoix, they expect, I saw something like a 6% growth
Well,
on average for Benzie County. I don't know where they're gonna put them, but
Benzie
talk about
County isn't.
senior
Put 'em over
resources
by
too.
you.
Senior resources has significant
needs.
space needs. And that might be a very nice relationship.
Rhonda, isn't Benzie County considered urban anyway?
we are urban.
considered urban.
or
As far as
Who told
Medicaid
us that?
buckets, we are-
No, Central Wellness told us that, right?
Oh,
We were
It's Tim, wasn't it?
I'm serious, Gary.
I know you're,
from the state.
I was trying to remember who said it, but it was
No.
you. huh?
Well, whoever it was, they've never been up here before.
So,
Jeez.
yeah, that could be an interesting conversation down the road. So,
That,
anybody have anything they want to add to that? You feel like you have a direction, Katie? We good?
Yeah, I have a really good direction.
Okay,
One that
let's talk about screen sharing. Art, you wanted that added?
Yeah, when I was vacationing and I was joining meetings by remote, it occurred to me that there are things that you guys are looking at or different groups are looking at that the public or even people sitting out here don't have the advantage of. And I was just wondering if it's worth having administration explore what it would take to start doing some screen sharing.
So are you want like more the packet up, right? Or because I mean we already screen share presentation. So like today when Troy was here, I hit share and everybody on YouTube watched his presentation just like you.
Okay,
Do you want like the packet screen shared? Is that what you're thinking? Because presentations we share
okay,
typically.
I didn't realize we were sharing presentations.
Yeah. The
Uh,
only time
I
we
have to think
wouldn't
about
is if, they haven't provided it to us like in advance and they just show up with paper copies. Well, then I don't really have an ability to,
And then people in the audience usually don't have them either.
right.
right.
So, but 9 times out of 10, we are sharing the screen. Now we could share the packet and run through the packet if you wanted to. That's an easy lift.
And the packet's available
Write it up.
online.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious. I've never had anybody say to me, boy, I wish I could have seen that presentation. This is one person's observation and I'm more dialed into it than the average person.
So we do have an opportunity. I mean, it could be expensive. I know our video system here is not that old, but I'm not overly impressed with it.
Working today.
I gotta
just-
be happy today.
There's much better solutions out there that I don't know if that's something we would look into, or it doesn't affect me one way or the other because I'm usually sitting here anyway.
I mean, we do have an IT professional on staff now that maybe could offer some suggestions. I do remember when I started, Rebecca made the comment she inherited this project and didn't have much of a say in what was chosen and why. So it was an inherited project to Becky and an inherited project then to me. So,
And the company we went with, I remember them being non-responsive after a point.
They were great to begin with. And once we hired them, it was like crickets.
well, I can tell you, I've been communicating with a company that I ran across them at they were a vendor at one of our things. And I was talking to them about adding some, video and audio to a 206 because we are using that space a lot more for, meetings where that makes sense. And, their cost was a lot lower than what I anticipated based on what we paid for this system. And there was still a lot of capabilities. And so, I mean, there's definitely people out here in this market if we wanted to explore changes or improvements or what have you, because I was looking at it for 206 as well. Right now we just have the TV, but we were looking at ways of adding a speaker in there and projecting to that TV versus having to plug in and then use your mouse. And we were looking at enhancing that room.
I do attend meetings in here. The EDC was the last one and I was texting you.
Yeah.
I can't hear, like as far away as you are from that microphone, get closer and say something. I'm looking at Greg.
Hello?
Can you hear that? She sounds magnified now, right? When you talk closer,
Hello?
do you hear her better when she's closer?
Do you hear me better now or when you're closer?
So this is what picks up the microphone.
So you have
You
to be
can
like
hear
an
me now.
inch
You're
from the
not
microphone.
struggling to read my lips from over there, right? as
Imagine
soon as I
the
move back
germs
here-
though.
I'm basically just talking.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like when you're sitting out there. You have to be right on top of this to have it projected.
Imagine the germs that you're
Yeah.
sharing.
So I can say whenever I viewed this online, I never have a problem listening to art.
Yeah.
He doesn't need the mic.
He's
Look how
the
far away you
quietest
are.
whisperer
Look.
out there.
I know, and.
Look,
Ron used
you're
to
like
yell at
4
me
feet away.
Every meeting.
And he
There
said it first.
are new microphone systems that pick up sound better. that could be just an improvement to the system. I mean, honestly, this isn't terrible. I think sound is our downfall, but the computer system itself isn't terrible. It's the sound.
As compared to 10 years ago, we're light years ahead. But
Is it
as
Buzz
we,
Lightyear?
as we've all agreed, we want to continue to modernize our practices. I've long since believed that the community, as we're changing the look of our community, the needs of that community are changing to the extent that where they came from, they want those same amenities here.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's just a matter of keeping us up to date. And Tim, I couldn't tell you if it's just a software issue or a hardware issue.
Well, it's partially your camera resolution has to do with your audio feed inputs.
Well, a lot of community systems, they're set up so like when I'm talking, my face would be big. And then when you start talking, it flips to your face. Whereas we just have this, system that shows up for us from a distance. Whereas a lot of the newer community systems, it'll zoom in on the people speaking.
I was using an iPad and everybody looked really tiny.
Right.
And what about a remote mic, like a mic, you see them used in church where they just clip here. So everybody is the same distance away. And it's not this unit sitting in front of you. Is that a possibility to convert to that with the system that we have?
And I think they have them where they're actually mounted in the ceiling and they just picks up every.
Oh, really? Okay, okay.
I'm not that techie. I'd have to call a guy to ask those questions.
Let me tell you, kind of a counterpoint to that is if I want to lean over and say something to you, I want to be able to do it between you and I. And if I'm wearing this microphone on my shirt, and it's going to be appropriate, whatever I'm saying to
I'm
you.
sure.
All right, but. Okay.
Okay,
Can't do it.
anything to add to screen sharing? We're gonna look at, are we
I-
looking at?
I'm just,
I
do
can,
you have bandwidth to do that or?
I'm gonna touch base with Michael. I mean, Michael's gonna know that sort of stuff
You
much
gonna have
more.
bandwidth to do that?
I don't know. I'd have to ask him. I anticipate there being vendors again next week too that I can ask.
Yeah, just putting it back on the radar. that
Yeah.
There's room for improvement.
I know the company that I talked to about 206, they like did a digital meeting with me and I walked them around the room and then they offered me all these options and it didn't take a ton of my time. But
I don't know if it's coming up in any of your meetings, but the meetings that I have at the township and village is where there's not sound being projected,
those
it's
meetings are
becoming
hard.
an issue.
Yeah.
I can't hear.
They can't hear.
Right.
No.
People
Yeah.
are, especially the township.
I don't think this board is, I haven't heard a lot of negative feedback about this board. This board's usually pretty good from the people I know who watch the meetings. It's the EDC meeting and the other meetings where, they sit like Dorgoff sits like this blessed part.
Very.
And he has a low voice anyways, nobody hears him. And so, but you guys are pretty good about, speaking fairly into the mic, except Gary.
I get yelled at enough, but I
Can't hear
still
you.
don't do
Can you
it.
lean forward?
What was that, Gary?
All right,
Dawn.
we'll consider
Before
that.
we adjourn.
Yeah, no, I got one last public comment, but go ahead before we adjourn.
Before we go to last public comment, something to consider is if we're able to, a letter of support for the road commission's build out. I'm not asking for discussion right now, but that's gonna show up on a upcoming agenda. If we want to do, as a commissioners, do a letter of support.
I anticipate potentially having the resolution to approve the ballot language and such on April 22nd. Do you want to see it at that same time?
Well, does a resolution take the place of a letter of support?
No, statutorily, you have to adopt a resolution adopting the ballot language, which I'm trying to get lined up for April 22nd with Pat McGow. Do you want that at the same meeting?
I didn't think we were supposed to do that.
Well, I'm asking, because they're an authority on their own. The question is, can we do it? And if we can, do we want to? So I wouldn't worry about April's meeting.
Okay.
Because this is more or less a PR thing anyway.
Right.
Gary, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think we really don't have the authority to ask the public we can ask the public that it's a good idea, or we can help with the information process. But I don't think we want to adopt a resolution that says we'd like you to vote for the
No,
road commissions.
Well, I know you're just throwing language out there, Gary, but it wouldn't be that direct. But to your question, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
I'd like to have Katie explore whether we can even do it or not. I realize that if it was for the sheriff's office, well, for the jail, we couldn't. But because the road commission is a separate authority, can we then do a letter of support?
Well, they're a component unit of the county.
Yeah.
They statutorily, their budget comes to us, we hold their money, we have to approve any ballot language, we have to approve their board's compensation. They're a component unit of the county.
Katie, you may come back and say, legal counsel says no.
Okay.
I'll live with that.
Legal counsel says no.
well, at the end of the day, then, if you want to push this forward and you don't have a unanimous vote about doing it, the board speaks with one voice and it wasn't unanimous. I don't think that's our role. Our role is to inform people, to allow it to be on the ballot, to let the voters vote whether they support it or not. I mean, we're not supposed to be, directing their vote. We're supposed to be allowing the information to get out there. I think it would be inappropriate.
Yeah, other than you'd be surprised how many people might be interested in our opinion. And
I've
if
been
I
asked
speak,
that.
if I speak for Art Janat alone, that never happens. As long as I'm sitting on this board, someone's gonna interpret it as I'm speaking for the commissioners. Even if I say several times, this is my opinion only.
I've been asked before, well, how would you vote on it? I said, I would never tell you how to vote.
Right.
I'll give you the information that I have. And you can infer what you want to from that, but I will never tell you how to vote.
Guys, I'm perfectly comfortable if you don't want to explore it. I'm just, for the first time, I'm seeing the road commission make a legitimate effort to sell themselves. And I'm thinking, okay, when you're not selling yourself, that's your problem. But when you're working hard to do it, what's my role there? Because in my mind, I don't really like the timing of it, but they need a new building.
And they're working on it. I'm very proud of the fact that they're out there talking to people and getting things answered.
Katie, what I hear is that I'm probably the only one that is interested in that, so.
Maybe you can forward the information that they provided on. Making sure that that information's out there, because I do think that, you know, they're finally, like you said, they're finally out there doing their own cheerleading. They're trying to get the information out there why they need it.
I told.
Maybe it's a question of making sure that the public has that information, right?
Yeah, that's good. Again, I'm not really saying we're advocating them. It's about information. It's about letting them know that we acknowledge there needs to be a new building. But frankly, I'd wish that they waited till the bond was paid for at the Maples, and I've said that publicly. But there's no doubt in my mind they need a new
I
building.
don't have a problem with Katie exploring possibility. I really think I wouldn't be in favor of doing it.
But your
Yeah,
call, guys.
legally,
I'm
we
just
could
putting
do
it
it.
out there.
Christie, do you have a position?
I see their need, and if I could legally do it, I probably would write a letter saying, yeah, they need a building.
Yeah, you could
Yeah,
probably
look at
legally
you.
do it, but
I already penned the question to Matt. so-
Okay, well then we'll get the answer. What we can do.
all right, thanks, guys.
Same.
I'm gonna open the last public comment.
Don't
I'm
you
gonna
dare.
close the last public comment. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye. Thank you, everyone.